In this video, we're talking about some practice techniques that can be really helpful in your musical journey. And they apply to me and musicians everywhere. It's not just for people in piano class. So in really no particular order, a couple things that can be really helpful. First, schedule your practice time and stick to it. It's really easy to get distracted, especially in this time when a lot of us are home with a lot of time and nowhere else to go. It's really easy to get distracted on YouTube or in the kitchen or whatever. So stick to your practice time just like you would attending class. That goes hand in hand with removing distractions. So when it's your practice time, keep your phone away, keep electronics away. If you can, practice in a spot where your family won't distract you. That might not be possible all the time, so do your best there. And then next, establish goals for what you would like to accomplish. So we're looking at this minuet in D minor as an example. If I were to look at the entire first page, there's a lot of notes on there and a lot of fingerings, and it might feel a little bit overwhelming to think about learning that all at once. So instead, what I could do is say, today I have 15 minutes to practice right now, so I'm going to see if I can get the right hand only, just that section, just the first line, and that's much more doable than looking at trying to get the whole thing learned in one go. So goals, accomplishable goals are really good. The nice thing about setting small, reasonable goals is if you get to here and it's going well, then you could certainly learn beyond that or add the left hand to the first section. But it's more discouraging to go the other way and accomplish less than you planned. Something else that's really helpful is listen to recordings of your piece. In the age of YouTube, there's almost nothing that hasn't been put up on YouTube, so you can definitely find dozens of recordings of pretty much any piece. So do occasionally listen to the piece for inspiration, and that can be really helpful. The biggest thing I would say, and you've probably heard me say this in class, is zoom in. It's so easy to just play through an entire section. Let's say you're working on this first line that I highlighted there. It's so easy to just play through that entire thing 5 times and call that good. But really you might find that there's a hiccup, let's say right here. So what you need to do is zoom in and find out why that's a trouble spot. And in this particular instance, for example, once you realize that this from this note to this note is a second, but the fingering that you're using is 1 to 4, that's really quite unusual. And so once you analyze that and realize that, it's much easier to solve that problem. And you might have missed that if you were not zooming into that section. Similarly, once you get this section done here, you might add on another note on either end. So maybe you extend it to here to get that transition, and then maybe you extend it to there. Sometimes something else I'll do is I will do like 2 or 3 notes and then shift the pattern. So I'll do, let's say, these 3 notes, and once I feel like I can do those, then I will go and play those 3, and then I'll move the pattern down and down, etc. And then once I feel really comfortable with that, then what I can do is make a bigger section, let's say 4 notes, and shift that the other way, or keep going. So there's a lot of ways you can practice with this, but the idea is don't just play through the entire piece 5 times or 3 times or whatever. Zoom in to fix the trouble spots, because most of it probably won't be a trouble spot, but there will be a couple sticking points. Something else you've also heard me say a lot is slow. Slow and steady is really, really important. If you go too fast, then it's easy to make mistakes, and the more you make those mistakes, the more they're programmed into your body and hard to get out. So only occasionally speed up just to see what you can do, and it's kind of fun to do that. So you can kind of challenge yourself to go steady for, say, 15 minutes, and then maybe with your last 5 minutes of practice, then you just play through and have fun seeing what you've accomplished in that practice session. Similarly, going back to the zoom in idea, only do the big picture, let's say the whole first page, occasionally. Maybe do that at the beginning of your practice and the end, and maybe once or twice in between, just to see where you're at. Another really important thing in practice is to use consistent fingerings. So I even use highlighters sometimes to highlight the important fingerings. Not everything needs to be highlighted, probably, but things like these things where it's a weird finger switch, definitely I would do that. And just make sure that whenever you are playing that section, you use those fingerings that you have decided. It's okay to switch fingerings. For example, I might choose to do, let's see, I kind of like what they have there, but just for example's sake, let's say I don't want to do that 3, I want to do 2 there. So I'm going to cross it out and write in the 2, just so I can always stay consistent there. Something else that's really important is don't let mistakes go unaddressed. So if you are consistently, let's say, missing this interval and you're playing this note instead, or maybe you're overshooting and going to this note, don't let that keep happening. Don't move on over here until you fix what's going wrong there. Good. Something else that can be really helpful is record yourself. Maybe you could do this at the end of your practice session, maybe at the beginning as well, just so you have a record of your progress. But recording yourself and then listening back with the score will actually reveal things that you didn't notice were going wrong, because your brain is so engaged when you're playing that you don't actually hear some of the mistakes. Your brain ignores them. So recordings can be brutally honest. They're painful to listen to sometimes, but they're really helpful in getting you to the finish line. So those are the practice techniques I would suggest. I really encourage you to take them to heart and use them as you're working on your final projects. I'm also going to include a link to an interesting study that, it's entitled 8 things top practitioners do differently. And it's from some university music majors. And just a really interesting study that I encourage you to read, and that can encourage you as well. All right, that's all for this one.